It was a typical Tuesday morning in the Johnson household. The sun was just rising, the birds were chirping, and everything seemed calm and peaceful, on the outside at least. Inside the house, things looked very different. It was 7 a.m., and the day was already off to a chaotic start. "Where's my shirt?" shouted Tim, the 12-year-old son, as he ran around his messy bedroom. Clothes were flying through the air as he dug through piles of laundry. "Tim, it's in the dryer!" his mom, Mrs. Johnson, yelled from downstairs. At the same time, 8-year-old Rachel, Tim's younger sister, was sitting at the kitchen table trying to finish her school homework. "Mom," she whined, "how do you spell adventure? I need it for my English class." "Rachel. We don't have time for this," Mrs. Johnson replied, rushing around the kitchen trying to make breakfast. She handed Rachel a bowl of cereal and a banana, then moved straight to making coffee for herself. Mr. Johnson, the father of the family, walked down the stairs in his pajamas, looking half asleep. "Do we have any more toothpaste?" he asked. "It's in the bathroom cabinet where it always is," Mrs. Johnson said, balancing 2 plates of toast in her hands. By 7:15 a.m., things only got busier. Tim burst into the kitchen, now wearing his football uniform, holding his shoes. "Mom, have you seen my football bag?" "It's in the hallway next to the umbrella," Mrs. Johnson replied, quickly spreading peanut butter on toast. Rachel was now eating her cereal, but she spilled milk all over the table. "Mom, I spilled it!" With a sigh, Mrs. Johnson grabbed a kitchen towel and wiped the table while pouring coffee with her other hand. The coffee spilled onto the counter and she groaned. "Can't I just have one calm morning?" "Calm mornings don't exist in this house," Tim said with a smirk, grabbing his bag and running out the door. "Tim, don't forget your lunch!" Mrs. Johnson called after him, holding up a brown paper bag. But Tim was already gone. Meanwhile, Mr. Johnson finally made it to the kitchen, now dressed for work. He poured himself a cup of coffee but made a face after tasting it. "Did you put sugar in this?" he asked Mrs. Johnson. "No, and I don't have time for custom coffee orders," she replied, trying to help Rachel tie her shoes. Rachel wiped her hands on her dress and Mrs. Johnson sighed. "Rachel, don't do that. You'll get your clothes dirty." "But they were already dirty," Rachel said with a shrug. "Of course they were," Mrs. Johnson mumbled. At exactly 7:30 a.m., the school bus honked its horn outside. "Rachel, go!" Mrs. Johnson said, handing her daughter her backpack. Rachel grabbed it, nearly tripping over the dog, Max, who was lying in the hallway. "Bye, Max!" Rachel yelled as she raced out the door to catch the bus. Max barked in response, wagging his tail. Finally, the house was quiet. Mrs. Johnson sank into a chair at the dining table and sipped her now cold coffee. "Peace. At last," she whispered to herself. But of course, it didn't last long. "Where's my tie?" Mr. Johnson called from the bedroom upstairs. Mrs. Johnson groaned. She got up, walked into the bedroom, and found the tie hanging on the door handle. "Right here." "Thanks, honey," Mr. Johnson said, giving her a quick kiss on the cheek before rushing out the door. By 8 a.m., the house was officially empty, except for Max and Mrs. Johnson. She looked around at the messy kitchen, dirty dishes, spilled coffee, and cereal on the floor. She sighed and said, "Well, Max, it's just you and me now." Max wagged his tail and stared up at her with big, hopeful eyes. "You want breakfast, don't you?" Mrs. Johnson asked with a smile. She got his bowl and filled it with kibble. Max happily started eating, and Mrs. Johnson finally sat down again. As she cleaned the kitchen later, Mrs. Johnson thought about how every morning seemed to be a whirlwind. "Why doesn't anyone ever plan ahead?" she joked to herself. Still, as stressful as mornings were, she wouldn't trade them for anything. She loved her family, loud and messy as they were. She picked up Tim's forgotten lunch, still sitting on the counter. "He'll probably realize he forgot this at some point," she said, shaking her head. After cleaning everything up, she finally made herself a fresh cup of coffee and sat by the window. Outside, the sun was now shining brightly, and for the first time that morning, everything felt calm. Just as Mrs. Johnson started to relax, Max began barking at the window. "What is it now?" Mrs. Johnson asked, standing up to check. Looking outside, she saw Tim running back up the driveway. "Mom, I forgot my lunch," he shouted, red-faced and out of breath. Mrs. Johnson laughed and held up the brown paper bag. You always do, she said as she handed it to him. Tim grabbed it, grinning. Thanks, Mom. You're the best. And just like that, he was gone again, sprinting back toward the school bus stop. Well, Max, Mrs. Johnson said with a chuckle. Here we go again. Max barked in agreement, wagging his tail as he lay back down on the floor. If you like what we're doing, please give this video a like and don't forget to subscribe to our channel.